Greetings, Kooplings, and welcome back to the Nintendo Shack. Tonight we record a very special episode. Myself, Caroline, and Kevin record episode 98 of the Nintendo Shack podcast, as we look towards the big 100. This one's titled The One with PEER Schneider. That's right, co-founder of IGN, frequent host of Nintendo Voice Chat, drops by the Shack to discuss his career in video games, Nintendo, and a bunch of other things. But before we begin the show, I just wanted to stop and say a heartfelt thank you to all of you that have supported Nintendo Shack and PSVG over the past few years. If you ever wrote into our show, if you ever jumped into the Discord, if you ever supported us on Patreon, or you just listened to our shows, being able to have folks like PEER drop by, it's an awesome moment for us. And none of it's really possible without your support and supporting us to keep doing our shows. So I just wanted to say thank you for continuing to shack with us. And that's it, really. I don't want to overstay my welcome, so let's get on with the show. But truly, guys, really, thank you. Joining us this week, as mentioned in the intro, is the legendary PEER Schneider. Legendary video game journalist, legendary internet memedom, legendary Nintendo podcast legend. I mean, so this is not lost on me. Kevin is here, back in the Nintendo Shack. Welcome back, Kev. And Kevin and I have had an ongoing round and round about streamers and how these kids are so connected to streamers. And it's not lost on me that PEER, you're kind of like the first influencer. You're filling the role that Ninja and these guys are filling for kids today. You did that 20 years ago.
Wow.
So
yeah.
I'm going to introduce you and be a good guest and host and get out of your way and all that. But I have to start the show just by letting you know that I've listened to you as long as I can remember listening to podcasts. I very vividly remember the lead up to the Wii U. So I go all the way back to the Wii generation. And I just want to say, I think every Nintendo fan that listens to podcasts finds their way to NVC. And NVC probably helps them find their way to other shows. And the show has changed so much. I'm a huge Audrey Drake and Rich George fan. I did a shout out to them last time. But all of the hosts that come through with Casey and Zach now, yourself and Brian, the Jose era, it ebbs and flows, but NVC has been such a staple for podcasting. And personally, I wouldn't podcast. I definitely wouldn't podcast if I wasn't listening to NVC every week and saying, man, I love what they do. I'd love to do that. And I think I can't be alone in saying that. I imagine that there's other podcasters out there that would like to say that to you. And since we have the opportunity, I wanted to open the show and just start with that and let you know that.
No pressure.
Wow, that's the intro. Can you hold on? Can you call my wife?
We'll send you the recording. You can use it as your voicemail intro.
That's very, very nice. Thank you. Look, it's all it's been a fun run. I started with Nintendo content way back in the mid '90s. Made my own fan site with Nintendojo, and then joined Imagine Media back then for N64.com. But it's all been really selfish. I'm just having fun. I love Nintendo games, so it's kind of weird that I get to do all the things that I love, and somehow people are paying me for it. Don't tell me.
So we've got a lot of questions about all of that, and I guess I'll just kick off the show. I want to start with exactly what you just said. A lot of folks know you. They know you from Reaction Guys. They know you from IGN. They may know you from Nintendo Voice Chat. But a lot of folks may not know that you started just like us, just like everybody. You started Nintendojo. And, just like we started PSVG and we started the Nintendo Shack, and welcome, to the Nintendo Shack. And, we all start this, I think, at the beginning, we all start this because it's something we just love to do. We love the video games. We love the products. We're fans of the people that make them and the publishers that create them. And, can you just tell us about Nintendojo, like your motivation, your early, what made you jump back into the AOL.com era and get started?
Oh, wow, you remember that. So I went to college in Japan, where I fell in love with the Super Famicom and Nintendo's Japanese version of the Super NES and just Nintendo games as a whole. And I brought my Japanese games library with me when I moved to the States. I'm originally from Germany, And I went to the grad school of journalism at Berkeley, and learned how to do video editing, shooting cameras, editing, obviously copywriting, layout, all that stuff. Really cool program, but they really didn't know a lot about the internet at the time, and we're talking about mid 90s. And so I figured, hey, why don't I in my spare time get my hands dirty a little bit and create some web layouts, do some graphic design, but also publish some content. So I was like, I love Nintendo games. The N64 is around the corner. Why don't I just make a Nintendo fan site on my free space on AOL? Back then, we had an AOL email address. Kind of turned into the Noob network later, but I used my free allocated web space just to publish content, and for some odd reason, people found it. And then it got featured. I called it Nintendojo, the Nintendo Dojo, basically. And Game Informer at the time highlighted it as like website of the month, and so more and more people came to it. Until I finally kind of spun it out, made it a .com URL instead of members AOL pair, whatever it was. I forget. It's been so long. But it was honestly, I started it just to kind of mess around with web design, HTML coding, all of that. I wanted to learn it, but also because I had such a passion about Nintendo games, and I felt like there was something missing. There were a couple of Nintendo fan sites and even professional sites at the time already. What is GameSpot now? I think was Fuse back then, or something like that. And I felt like they weren't looking at import games. So they weren't looking at some of the franchises that hadn't made it big in the US, like Doraemon, for example. I love the Mystical Ninja franchise. There were sequels in Japan that we never saw here. And so I started writing about that stuff. And somehow people came and they liked it.
That's clever insight. I mean, you probably, at that time, the internet, you carved out a niche corner. You were providing the information, especially before social media and the internet at large. You're providing information that probably nobody else was.
Yeah, and some of it was secondhand. I'd go to there's in San Francisco where I lived at the time. There's a Japanese bookstore called Kinokuniya, and I went there and I looked at the Japanese magazines at the time. It was like Famitsu and Dengeki 64, Yon, and all those mags. And there was always information about games that nobody here talked about, like Doraemon, like based on like Japanese anime. And so I kind of did a lot of secondhand reporting, right? Like Japanese magazine Famitsu's got the scoop on this game, translated some of the interviews, and then went into more feature writing, kind of sharing my opinions. And then developers started to reach out, right? I remember I reached out to David Deanspear from Iguana when he was working on Turok, the dinosaur hunter. And, I was surprised that he wrote me back. And, it was just kind of an unguarded industry at the time where you could reach out to a developer and they would just talk to you, which obviously doesn't happen the same way today. But, maybe through Twitter you can get answers and unique opinions like that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I love the story specifically, like I said, because you just created it. And with all the internet today, like the YouTubes and everything that's taken over, you have that ability. And I just think it's very inspiring to anybody out there. We've had several folks who came through our Discord and whatnot, like, hey, I love your Nintendo show. I want to start a Nintendo podcast. It's like, you can. Like, you be like Per Schneider, like anyway, just start something. You really have no idea where it goes. And Nintendojo is still alive. Like, it's still, the site's still up. You can still go there. It's crazy. What you created, was it 20, 25 years ago? Still going. It's amazing.
Yeah, modern people who have an opinion and something to say and want to share something, they have so many tools now. How cool is that you can get started with a YouTube channel, get views, and then actually almost automatically partner with a company like YouTube or Twitch to monetize the content you're creating. That's pretty unique. We didn't have that, right? It was, in order to actually make money, you had to take the step to serve ads back then and really get more professional. But yeah, there's so many tools. I mean, you brought up, before we started, you brought up Warrior 64, and it's like you can make a name for yourself with a insightful, fast Twitter channel that points out deals or sales and stuff. And so there's so many ways to break through now, whether it's through podcasts or social media or YouTube and Twitch. It's pretty awesome. So if you're thinking about it, do it.
Yeah, and that actually segues nice into the question I had. So, I mean, you've talked a little about it here. So you did the thing that every 90s kid wanted to do, myself included. In that age where the internet was booming, when you started N64.com, I was at in high school. I was getting exposed to the internet. I was doing a lot of web design, graphic design, Angel Fire websites, stuff like that.
GeoCities. Yeah.
GeoCities, yeah. Went to college for web and graphic design, did that kind of stuff, and started doing video game journalism with Advanced Media Network at that time. This was the launch of the GameCube, and I had worked with them for a little bit, and that's kind of where I kicked off. But it was greatly inspired by the work that you had done, and then to move flash forward, 20 years later, now we're doing podcasts on the regular, and Donnie and I have done this network thing for 4 years, and it's all because of following that trail that you blazed. So you achieved that dream that every 90s kid had as these consoles were coming out, saying like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to talk or write about video games. What was that experience like? Was that always the vision? Did you always have in your head like, okay, this is the end goal. This is what I want to build. How did you get to that?
No, and I can't take all the credit for it. The actual kind of the germ for what the company IGN is today already existed. There was a website at Imagine Media called N64.com, and Mac Casamassina, Doug Perry, they were already working there when I joined the company. I was just kind of lucky to step in at a point where a print publisher wanted to take some of its properties and turn them into websites or kind of go bigger. And so, like that entrepreneurial spirit was already there at the company. I didn't bring that. What I think brought was, a focus on doing coverage that was a little bit differently, really looking at the Japanese market. And then most importantly, we kind of created this one-to-one connection with the audience. We felt like we didn't want to be like a CNN for gaming. We didn't want to be the people to kind of like read the news. We wanted to be kind of like friends on the couch, right? And so we created like jokes and little memes around our content. We created this mailbag and called Inquiry and Input. And so it was all about interaction, all in text form. Like we didn't do a lot of video except for posting these tiny little postage stamp quick times. And like all of that then came out more and more and more. And then we kind of didn't realize how big the audience was out there because we used these early tracking tools for traffic, but it really doesn't tell you anything until they were like product launches. And we'd go to like an EB Games at the time, and there'd be people like recognizing us. And we're like, that's weird because we're writers. We have our photos on the website, but we're not on television. And so at that point, it turned from we're doing something that's just fun for us, and we didn't really have a goal or an end game. It turned into something that was maybe a little bit more, we thought, maybe there's something there. Maybe, journalists can have a direct connection to the audience, and it can be like this playful back and forth and like a new way of creating content that really creates content with the audience and not just for the audience. And then, as I took on more responsibility at that company then and took on leadership, that's where I kind of felt unshackled, and I got to try new things. And we launched websites for all sorts of different verticals. We tried music. We did try anime, all that kind of stuff.
I remember all that stuff.
We had a wrestling website.
Yep.
Honestly, we were throwing stuff at a wall and trying out stuff that we thought were fun. And then the thing that we discovered was that, gamers don't just want to talk games 24/7. We added entertainment content to the mix. And so, kind of as Star Wars was about to renew itself with episode 1 and all of that, we said, hey, maybe IGN is games and all that entertainment stuff, all that geek entertainment stuff that the big guys will never cover, smaller stuff than Star Wars. And well, that's kind of the now, right? Like if you look at the shows that are popular on Netflix or HBO just concluded Game of Thrones, those were all the things that we felt nobody cared about and nobody covered, and that was our niche back then. And now most gaming sites aren't just games. They are kind of like an IGN. They cover all that stuff on top of it. So
I don't interrupt you, but everything you're saying reminds me so much of just the time that all this was going on. You had like all this subculture. Everything had like its own magazine. It's very reminiscent of like if you were ever into like skating magazines and the things that they used to do, and it was all like very much the same thing. You'd find a community and you just cultivate it, and maybe you share a hobby or an interest, but then you just kind of live together and tackle all kinds of social things together around that hobby.
Yeah, and the business model for magazines that were specialized obviously failed, especially in the US. If you go to Europe, there's still kind of magazines that cover niche topics, and they can be profitable because smaller countries, easier to get the magazines out, and they're more profitable with smaller rate bases or smaller readership. In the US, the .com crash happened, and it really ruined a lot of things. It made it very hard for fan sites to persist and actually make money.
If I may, just because it's 2019, we have a lot of young listeners. I actually, one of the questions I wanted to, can you explain, like, because this is a pretty crazy moment in time. Like, you lived through this internet boom, and then, as you mentioned, the bubble burst. Can you maybe explain a little bit what that means?
Yeah, so early 2000s, advertisers got cold feet. Like it was kind of like this internet, bigger, all these companies wanting to go public and saying, hey, we will be worth this much money in the future.
Like Time Warner, AOL, everybody's buying each other in conglomerates, yeah.
And then I think the reality set in where it was just the value of the banner ad just kind of poofed away overnight, right? Like advertisers were starting to ask the tough questions. Are these ads actually reaching users? Are they worth the dollars, or is everything a bit inflated? And the answer was yes. Like our parent company at the time, now it's called Future, but it was Imagine Media. They thought they would be worth so much that they built these 2 giant buildings for an internet business monetized by banner ads. And just it couldn't possibly work out, right? And like we're all kind of like stretching ourselves thin and trying to cover more and more beats. And so at one point, there were hundreds of people at this company that was called Snowball at the time. In addition to IGN, it had networks focused on NFL sports, on power students, teaching students, Chick Click, a website for women only. Like so, all of these kind of topics. And suddenly it hit like this wall where it's like it was obvious the money wouldn't be enough. And then that happened to everybody on the web, and advertisers got cold feet, pulled back, advertised exclusively on television and still on magazines, and stopped advertising on websites. And so that was the bubble burst, and everybody got really worried about how you would pay for all these shiny new buildings and Aeron chairs and fancy monitors and all that stuff. And the answer was you couldn't. Everybody had to downsize. So we went down from hundreds of people to like a dozen.
Wow.
So IGN itself was just a core group of people as we shed all the different properties. So this company Snowball, which was multi-brand portfolio company, just became IGN Entertainment. There was just one core property left, and that was IGN.
Wow.
And that's the IGN that we know.
Yeah, and
that we've all grown up with.
Yeah, I was part of the kind of the founder crew of creating IGN Entertainment as a standalone company. First called Affiliation, then Snowball, then IGN Entertainment. We went public, got delisted from the NASDAQ, all of that stuff, So there was a lot of faith in our ability to reach audiences. And by the way, we reached lots of users at the time. So it wasn't hot air, but advertisers got cold feet. And so we hunkered down, we lived through it, and advertisers over time came back, and they started to see value in our specific audience. And one of the reasons we survived, a part of the smarts of our CEO who really was able to sell us to banks out there and get investment dollars in, was that gamers and young males in particular, 18 to 34, started fleeing television. They weren't watching television anymore. And so suddenly, an IGN that only catered to, we were 98% male as far as audience went, only catered to young males. Suddenly, we were becoming the holy grail for a lot of advertisers who couldn't reach those users through TV. So we pulled through while some other companies may have failed. Like a Chick Click, a young women's website, didn't make it.
I wouldn't want to go to a site named Chick Click. That's just me.
So it was a really popular URL at the time. They had an email service called Chick Mail, and everybody wanted a Chick Mail address too.
Donnie just registered that podcast name. Chick Click.
Did you?
We got it. It's all set.
One of the things I've really always admired about your interviews, as I've followed you through the years, is how open you are to discussing just kind of the landscape and monetization and being able, because you're always very genuine and transparent. You've always said that if you don't, if I can quote the great PEER Schneider, if you don't support and you don't promote, the things you love, they'll go away. The monetization isn't a bad thing. It is not. Then it's not that they're trying to, nickel and dime you for everything you have. But if you really love IGN, you should consider supporting or subscribing or doing whatever you can, visiting the clicks, turning off ad blocker. And I appreciate the candor, because it's real easy to sit there. And I've done it myself, so I'm not blaming anybody. But it's real easy to sit at your computer and you see an ad and you're like, oh, I hate this. Why do they always do this all the time? But when you hear from the founder why, he tells you why. It's like, hey man, when this bus, like, this is how we pay the folks, this is how we do the content that we have. I've always really appreciated why you did that. So if I could spin from here and take you into a new place, how does something like Twitch and Patreon and YouTube affect like a conglomerate like IGN? Because now you've got, I say it all the time, there are thousands, probably more than that, hundreds of thousands of people on YouTube with millions of subscribers that I don't even know. I find one all the time. Somebody's like, I've got 250,000 followers. I'm like, I don't even know who you are. So like it feels so big. Like how does IGN, like, how do they spin into that? Or do you take advantage of that? Or is it still not totally your lane?
So we've got, on YouTube, we have 12.5 million subscribers. So we leaned into that platform really early on when it was mostly dog on a skateboard video.
Cat videos.
And there was no business model yet, right? What we saw was that people were taking videos from our website and sharing them to YouTube, and some of those videos had really high views. So, as we were developing like video formats like reviews as videos and all of that, we saw them getting shared. So we knew there was demand there. And so we said, all right, before we let somebody else do that, let's just do it ourselves. We're not making any money there, but at least we're building an audience on that platform. So maybe someday you can monetize there. And we were careful. We only uploaded part of the videos we output. And that was a smart move in the end, it turns out, right? 12.5 million subs means we have a lot of views there. I can tell you last month we did 145 million views on our main YouTube channel.
Wow.
So I always, whenever somebody says games media is going out of business, I kind of point them to the numbers and like
it's bigger than it's ever been.
Pretty good to me, but maybe people are wiser and are seeing the bad future. So we were there at the right time and kind of building up an audience. Twitch is unique in that what performs on Twitch are slightly different games, and also in order to reach an audience there, you can't just review games when they're out. You have to be there and cultivate an audience every day. You have to have single personalities rather than a portfolio like IGN with lots of different voices. And I'd say some of that is true on YouTube too. And so it's a little bit more difficult for us to play on Twitch. We have a Twitch channel and are monetizing on that platform. And so our approach is always, the more the merrier. When there's a platform where we can reach gamers or entertainment enthusiasts, we're there. Like TikTok, it has been getting bigger in the US. We've got, over 100,000 followers on that platform because we put some content on there as well.
Didn't even know you did that. Okay, good to know.
Well, don't tell anybody yet. I want to get to 1 million before our competitors find that. Damn it, why did I say that? But no, the idea is to just be there, be where the audience is, and then monetization usually follows. Now, that's obviously not always true, and you can really shoot yourself in the foot if you spread yourself too thin across all these different platforms, right? Like, we don't make a ton of money on Twitter, by publishing video content, but we cultivate an audience there, and when we need an audience to check out a review on IGN, we're able to point back to it. Now, there's an impact, right? At the point where our YouTube channel generated more video views than our old website, at that point, you're definitely making less money on YouTube than you are on your website. You have to pay Google half of what you make, right? And also, you don't control the experience. Like, they can reroute your audience after they finish watching a review to a competitor or another YouTuber. And so there is that risk at all times. And so you have to be smart about how you control the audience and how you work with advertisers in order to get on the platforms that you have. But yeah, that's absolutely, when PewDiePie was able to grow an audience much faster and to a much bigger level, there's tremendous influence, and obviously he's able to pull down advertisers when he's being nice and not saying nasty stuff. He's able to leverage his influence to bring on advertisers and charge a lot of money, and those could be dollars that we could have gotten through ads as well.
Is it hard to? is it hard to keep like an IGN, like I want to say it like a team? I know you're much bigger than that, so it may not be apples and oranges, but is it hard to keep a team together and focused and really like rallying behind the flag in an era where everybody can just start a YouTube or a Twitch channel and just go alone, and they don't have to work with together or for you or with you or anything like that?
Well, I mean, that's a risk anytime you put somebody on camera and you we talked about social following, right? Like, so we have 5 million followers on Facebook, 2.5 million on Instagram. Anytime you put somebody out there, they gain visibility through our brand, and they're being followed and they're being exposed. And, in return, they are obviously using their talent to get us views and help us out. And so there's always that risk the moment you put somebody who's not a CG generated fake character on screen, that someday they will walk. And that, I think that just comes with the territory. And, as a content leader, I know anyone who's a host on a show like The Daily Fix who gets exposed to a couple million people every year. There's this point where they'll say, okay, well, I got a headphone company calling me who want me to post on my personal Instagram, stories about wearing these headphones, and I get paid for it. And there comes a point where I can't match that salary from like 100 advertisers that want to feature that personality. And so, we've made things easier for people who work here to monetize outside. Now, under strict ethical guidelines, we don't want somebody to get paid by a game company to endorse something that they shouldn't. We want to make sure that we have an honest editorial voice. But there's that risk. And so, in the past, you've seen Kinda Funny, for example. You've seen Greg and Colin, those folks spin out. We've seen RKG, the people who did Prepare to Try for IGN out of our UK office, spin out and create their own channels. Game Explain is Andre used to work on our strategy team. So it happens. The great thing is that we are friends with many of them and have good connections, and so it kind of becomes this bigger network of influencers that we can work with, who sometimes guest on our shows, or I'll be on Kinda Funny in 2 weeks as well. And somehow I think it'll work. We'll discover new people, give new people a chance to make a name for themselves, and it's just a lot of work.
Yeah. It's an investment. It's an investment in them. That makes sense.
So anytime you're running like a franchise, it's always, you got to cultivate that next batch. It's next man up.
We don't know anything about that staffing stuff, Donnie.
You could do stuff with like all-in contracts and try to bind people to yourselves, or you could control everybody's social media accounts and own them. Like TV shows like Survivor do that, where the people featured on the show don't actually own their own social media accounts. That doesn't sound like fun.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely. And it's nice. It's for me, like hearing you say that you've relaxed or maybe allowed, some legally things for folks to capitalize on being good on camera, being a personality. I think it's wonderful. And if there's somebody out there that's listening into the show that's like, man, I want to grow up and work at IGN one day, that's something that, you don't normally get to hear that type of stuff. That's
at one point we were worried that, people, first of all, we were worried that people would overwork themselves and like go home after IGN and then do lots of stuff on their own. And so we were a little bit more controlling when it came to, people streaming on their personal Twitch channels. Sure. We were fine with them game streaming, but when they started to monetize, it can sometimes create a conflict of interest, right? Like, I don't want to have a reviewer work at IGN and then stream at night and find out they were sponsored by a game company, right? Like that could, they don't have that buffer that we have here where a sales team sells the ads. They are literally then being sponsored by the products that they cover, and that could be an issue. But we've relaxed that. We do let people monetize, their Twitch streams and all of that, even though they work here. But we just want to make sure that they're disclosures. We want to make sure, like people don't work on video games that we review, and like sometimes when there are any entanglements with friends, that we disclose all that and get it out in the open.
That makes sense. So actually, speaking of reviews, so kind of to loop it back here, we found within PSVG that reviewing is kind of a tricky situation, especially when we first started. It's both a blessing and a curse. It's the problem you love to have, but you can't really confide in other people when you say, there's so many games right now, I don't have time to play these things. So, we get to try games out early. We get to tell others about the experience we had. Those are the great things. But sometimes the game isn't so great, but yet you have to be fair and honest. But you kind of feel bad about it a little bit. So, like, we try to have that thing like, okay, we want to not necessarily give a score on a game, but talk about the opportunities and what's great about the game, and kind of have that balance, unbiased view, as you mentioned. How do you help manage those moments with your staff to be like, okay, you need to tone this down a little bit, or really you couldn't find anything good here? Like, do you have a hand in that, or like, how do you coach people into doing that?
Yeah, first of all, obviously, when you have an editorial outlet where people sometimes interview the creators of the games as well, you want to make sure that everything is out in the open, and that somebody who reviews a game reviews it for what it is, and not for the relationship they could build by having a positive review, or they feel bad for an indie developer for working hard on something like take No Man's Sky, right? Like, awesome vision. Somebody worked really, really hard on it, but the game didn't turn out well. And so you want to make sure that your reviewer doesn't give bonus points to this game, not another game that's made by a big company, and they obviously put in just as much work and it turned out great, right? So the way that it works at IGN is we have a reviews editor. So Dan Stapleton oversees all review process, whether it's people inside the building or outside, freelancers. Checks in, first of all, we have checks and balances on time played, right? We do require that somebody plays a game reasonably to the end. And I say reasonably because some games like Elder Scrolls have side quests that can take hundreds of hours, but I will argue that you get a good feel for this game by completing like an 80-hour core quest or something.
Absolutely.
So we have that oversight, and then when somebody writes the review, the reviewer goes through and says, okay, you're saying this game is good, but you have more negatives. And sometimes that happens as a reviewer. When you really care about something, the things that aren't right stand out more, and you want to share them with it's almost like you want to share them with the developer, and so you put them into your review, and I wish they had done that, I wish they had done that. And obviously that's not that helpful to the audience, and so the reviews editor then goes through and does exactly what you're saying, kind of like, hey, this doesn't sound like a great out of 10, 8. This sounds more like the game is good or okay, and so then the person writing the review says, no, I feel this game is great, and so then you can go back and maybe balance some copy out a little bit.
That's a good idea, collaborative. I like that.
Yeah, we don't want a reviews editor who hasn't played the game then put undue pressure and say, you need to lower the score. We want to make sure that the reviewer defends the score in a way and really kind of, works with the reviewer, the reviews editor to balance the copy.
So with that being said, then, about balancing and kind of keeping things here, we see a lot, especially in the industry right now, this kind of outrage culture. Whether it's a developer did something and they ruined my game. Well, you didn't make the game, that was the developer. Or somebody reads a review, and you kind of have to keep in mind when looking at reviews that no matter how bad the game is, that's somebody's favorite game. So then they get outraged on it. How do you manage that from the outside perspective of like the outrage coming into your staff potentially, or them attacking developers potentially, and kind of maintaining that culture, keeping that at bay, if you will?
He's basically asking if you read IGN comments, Peer. Is what he's
I do, and there's this weird thing. Common culture is interesting, and social media culture and Reddit culture, they're all very interesting in that sometimes they don't want to hear the truth, right? They want you to reconfirm their hopes or their fears or their dislike of something, right? And so you see that in the feedback that you get. Like sometimes we get a review downvoted on YouTube because we weren't mad about microtransactions enough. And our approach was like, there are microtransactions in this game. They're okay. They're not breaking the game. I don't need to spend money on it. I was able to play this game. Like Assassin's Creed Odyssey is one of those examples.
Right.
I played the whole game. I never felt like they were upselling stuff to me. I understand some people felt like they only want to follow the main quest. I'm a notorious side quester. I get sidetracked. Like anybody asking, like, "Hey, my cat is stuck in the tree. I gotta do that. I'm sorry. I gotta get the cat first, right?"
Yeah.
And so some people are really upset about microtransactions being in that game. And the day it came out, it got in some user review score systems, it got zeros. I'm like, if you played that game, that game is not a zero. It doesn't, right? And so you have to, with your editorial staff, you have to kind of know the people. I think one thing that they are afforded at a company like IGN is there are checks and balances. We have a reviews editor. They're kind of separated from the kind of quid pro quo. Like if you're a YouTuber, let's say you take a game like, I don't know, what's a fantastic game, like Breath of the Wild, right? It's 10 in my book. But as a YouTuber, you can probably make more money if you say it's a 1 out of
Right.
10, right? Because you're creating a negative opinion, and some people have made entire YouTube channels around angry voices, and like the people who are not interested or hate it or even who love it then flock to your content because you have an outrageous opinion. We don't have that. Like, our editors don't make more money if a review has 1 million views or 10 views, right? And so there is that protection, and I think that doesn't exist in YouTube culture as much. Not to say people would do that, but it can happen. So there's the temptation. And then, when we interview people, we do look at their social media background and how they behaved in the past, and whether they are grounded, reviewers, or whether they're all over the place and get outraged by stuff. But look, if you're a fan of a game, you are passionate about that game, and so when you're a fan of a game series and a game series goes into a different direction, it can happen that you might have an outlier opinion that only matches with the super core user base. Like Breath of the Wild is a great example. We have somebody here who works in our ad ops department who says it's a terrible game. Yeah. I'm like, how can you possibly think this is a terrible game? I love the temple. I want to go into a temple, and in the middle of the temple there's a treasure chest, and I open it, and it's a boomerang, and I use the boomerang to get out of that room, and I defeat the boss with the boomerang, and now I have this and can use it in the world. And Breath of the Wild did away with that. And like, I can understand that, but at the same time, can you not see the brilliance?
Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
We have a couple folks on staff that share similar opinions, same opinions. The only thing I wanted, just different. I just wanted to say on the outrage statement that I really appreciate your transparency. Having followed you for so long, there are countless amount of times that I think either another reviewer or even a developer has reached out and they've made claims or said like you either weren't covering something enough or you didn't cover it fairly, and you're always right there and publicly. It's not like a DM thing, and you're like, hey, if you don't think this, tell me. And I've always appreciated it. I like seeing that from folks, as opposed, because it's so easy to just put your head in the sand and turn it off. Right. And
it can backfire. On Twitter, I complained about users review bombing Captain Marvel on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yep.
I know the people running Rotten Tomatoes. I know they're very frustrated by those actions. And I said, hey, the movie hasn't opened yet, and people are tanking it just because Bree said some stuff they didn't like in interviews, and like, I got immediately that got taken and posted on Reddit, and I got all these nasty little people coming after me and sending me nasty messages. Sometimes it backfires. I mean, I don't know, like I don't sweat it and I don't think about it afterwards, but the fact that I'm remembering obviously means that it has left an impression with me. And it's uncomfortable, right? And so I can understand that a lot of people don't want that, and they don't want to exactly state their viewpoints on some of these things, and but come on, like, seriously, if you're going to Metacritic and you're giving Call of Duty a 0 even though you haven't played it, why don't you just have a fun day and make yourself a sandwich, or a lady across the street, like, do something that makes you feel good. Why are you doing that? That's so weird.
Yeah, Donnie. It's okay for me to like Chibi Robo and Katamari Damacy, okay?
Yes!
So go back, Donnie. Chibi Robo is a fantastic game.
No, it's not.
Oh my gosh.
Chibi Robo is a game.
There's
the original, not the Flash, the original one.
All right. I don't hate it.
All right, so we talked pretty much, exclusively not Nintendo stuff. We started segueing into Nintendo stuff, but we are a Nintendo show, Nintendo Shack. So, we were talking a little bit before we started. Things behind us. You have this amazing like Mario backdrop behind you. I collect a lot of things behind me, as you can see. Kevin clearly does. Donnie does. But we know that you've got the amiibo collection. Okay? Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Do you collect anything else related to Nintendo at all aside from the amiibo?
Joy-Con.
Well, me too.
Extensive Joy-Con collection.
Okay, so you've got the Pikachu Eevee one on that one, right?
Well, this is ketchup and mustard.
Oh my gosh. All right, so it's the Eevee one and just the red.
Mario edition. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
I have every Joy-Con ever released that wasn't a special kind of giveaway like the Labo ones. Those are cool.
Yes.
Those are amazing. So where did you get the Eevee and Pikachu ones?
I bought them.
Oh no! So yeah.
So those I got. They sold them separately at the Pokemon Center in Japan.
Of course they did.
So I used to live in Japan. I have a lot of friends there, but you can also find some of those on eBay. And you know, like there's this curve where when stuff is new, it sells for $100. After a while, it comes down because some people bought a bunch and are sitting on them. So that's how I got some of the special edition ones.
I gotcha.
But I did pre-order the Disney Disney
Zoom Zoom. No
Disney
way.
Zoom Zoom.
Oh, yeah, I love that Mickey Mouse one.
Pre-ordered it on Amazon Japan because, well, first of all, it's the new Switch model. Mine is still the old battery, so I needed the bigger battery one.
You're gonna get a Mickey start button or a home button. It's gonna be amazing. We're Disney fans here. Kevin and I are extremely big into Disney, so I considered it for a second. So I'm only a neon collector right now. Donnie got the Mario red one, and I'm kind of into it, but I needed the purple and orange ones, and I need the opposite ones to come out.
I know.
You know?
I ordered those two.
It better happen.
You have to set yourself some limits. Like with Joy-Con, I have all the Pro Controller colors.
Are you listening, Caroline? Could you say that again, Pear?
For me, there's no limits.
No limits for Caroline.
Well, my cap was only official Nintendo stuff. I'm not buying any of the third-party Pro Controllers or. You know, I have one set of customized Joy-Con. I needed the see-through, the purple atomic purple thing, but
nice.
I didn't get any of the third-party ones. They're stupid anyway because they don't have Bluetooth.
See, that's before we knew you were coming on, and then Donnie said, Pear has the Amiibo collection, and
I showed her the shelf. I sent her the picture.
I looked at the pictures, and you had the Skylander ones, and I was like, I don't have those because those aren't the official Nintendo ones. But then I bought them all before you came on home. So I have.
You have both colors?
I have both. I have all the cars, dark versions, everything. The only amiibo that I do not own to date are those 6 baseball ones from GQ Power Pro Baseball that just came out in Japan.
I don't have those either yet.
Okay.
But I'm going to Japan next week.
Well, here's the thing. You had to pre-order the game from 6 different retailers that only came with one card.
I know. Oh, these are like I'm not collecting the cards, so that's why I draw the line. But I am going next week, and I'm going to see what I can dig up. Somebody pre-ordered them and put them all together and is selling them at a Super Potato somewhere. So we'll see what that costs.
Oh no! All right, so I've seen them on eBay. They're roughly
I see them.
They're roughly $150 to $200 on eBay. So I may bite soon, but I own all the Animal Crossing cards. It's I know.
Cards are not evil.
$200 for 6 cards. Like Donnie's told me, he's like, don't do it.
Don't. That's insane. No, Pear, she's asking for the hookup if you can't read between the lines.
If I see them for cheaper, I'll definitely message you. Yeah. But I only did the figurines, and I did get the Monster Hunter and Skylanders one. The Skylanders are so ugly.
They're basically McDonald's toys.
Yeah, they're made from very special plastic. No, I'm only doing the figurines. I'm doing the big ones though, like Detective Pikachu and Yoshi and all that. So what size is okay? And I do have 2 Kellogg's cornflakes boxes.
I do have the Super Mario cereal back there too. QB is probably the best one that we've got. It's the lightest one, and it's
Yep. Did you? So you pre-ordered the Golden Shovel Knight?
I did. I'm worried that it's going to be GameStop exclusive only. So I went ahead and it's $10 shipping, which is crazy. So they're doubling the price.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look,
did you get it pre-ordered though?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I'm worried that it's GameStop exclusive only.
It looks like it's GameStop exclusive, but then what happens is internationally, sometimes they'll release them more freely. Right. And you were able to get some of the GameStop exclusive ones from like Amazon for cheaper through importer.
Oh, I've imported from Amazon Japan for years now.
Yeah, I'm not a purist. I don't collect them. I take them out of the boxes.
Me too.
There's this wonderful documentary about people who obsessively collect toys called Toy Story 2.
Love it. I love it.
You can't coop up toys. You got to let them out of the box because otherwise at night they're trapped.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually cool getting the Japanese versions of them too. Like where I couldn't find. I think I have.
You have to.
I have a couple of the Japanese ones rather than US ones. Yeah.
During the Smash waves, Wave 4, I think, with NES, when the GameStop computers went down, it was absolute mayhem. And luckily, I was able to pre-order on Amazon Japan. So
yeah, all my original ones. The first wave I have all as US, but then later I dipped into some Japanese ones.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry you have that same problem.
Don't apologize to me. Apologize to my husband.
No, we need to create a social group. You guys need an amiibo
it's
anonymous group.
Amiibo, with Reddit Amiibo. We're already there.
The first step is admitting you have an amiibo problem.
What's even worse is that I still have a couple at home on top of all the ones. So I've got that giant shelf with all of them at work because it was too much. Like there were too many in my living room. I looked like like a crazy grandma who collected little porcelain figures.
Yeah.
And my wife was making fun of me. So I took them all to work. But then sometimes when I pre-order something and then somebody tweets out, "Oh, this figurine is up for pre-order," I pre-order it accidentally again. So then there's like a package from Walmart with some. I'm like, Walmart? Did I really? And then the Amazon package arrived the next day. So I have a bunch of them twice.
Wow.
This is truly Amiibo anonymous.
Really
I ordered it again. I just saw Wario64 put up the post and I hit buy.
One more Amiibo-related question. How long have you had the Shovel Knight 3-pack on pre-order? Because I counted my Best Buy order, and it was from October of 2017, and they're still not here.
Same. Isn't that crazy? I was just telling somebody it's been more than a year, and they're like, "Nuh-uh." Yeah.
October of 2017. It's been almost 2 years.
2 years. Yep.
Same. And it's like, good news. We have a new date for your Amiibo.
Yeah.
We'll get Golden Shovel Knight before then. It's unbelievable.
I want to pull us back into some video games before we let you go and get some video game talk. Pear, I was doing a little research, diving through some old podcasts. You once said that you thought the Switcher at this moment, the NX, whatever they thought the Switch was the last hurrah for Nintendo with hardware. Now, obviously, they hit it out of the park. We're riding a big wave as Nintendo fans right now. But what I wanted to ask you is, what do you think about how do you see, with all of your experience, how do you see the future playing out? Because we've got next gen coming. We see the rise of the streaming. We have xCloud. We have Stadia. How do you think Nintendo fits kind of into this next generation of video games?
Well, they were really smart with the move they made. It became very, very clear in the last 2 generations, even with the GameCube before it, that it is very difficult for Nintendo to compete on a level playing field with the other guys because the economics and the audiences are different for the competitors. And so what I mean by that is Nintendo is its own best customers. We've seen this with previous consoles. The top sellers are Nintendo games. They're just really, really good. They create and attract a certain type of audience, and inevitably a Nintendo platform post Super NES turns into a machine that's not right for Call of Duty or or any of these big mainstream franchise, Destiny and all of that. And so with the Wii U, that really hit the fan. You saw that Nintendo had a successful handheld in the market. Some games from third parties performed well. The Wii U, nothing worked. And then even Nintendo's core franchises didn't work as well. And so they had a really cool idea with the device and the screen, and I was so happy to see them pivot and have the courage to basically say goodbye to the handheld market. That's a huge step for them, right? They were uncontested in the hardware market. Sony tried to get in there, had some success in Japan, but was not able to do what Nintendo had done with the DS and the GBA before it.
And in Japan, I mean, handheld is king, Everybody has one.
Yeah, and so the only question we had predicted really early on that Nintendo's next device would be a hybrid.
Yep.
We talked about it.
I remember.
And then we kept on kind of saying like, well, but maybe technology isn't far enough for it to be powerful enough to also work as a console. But, obviously Nintendo had done the Wii, which wasn't as powerful as the competitors. The 3DS wasn't as powerful and still succeeded. So we thought for sure they'd go this direction. And they kind of surprised us because I think, the Switch as it came out was way more clever, versatile, and actually powerful than I expected it to be. it doesn't have the benefit of some of the other consoles where third parties are programming to the metal. Mm-hmm. So like if you go back to the Super NES, Konami made incredible stuff on the Super NES, right, on the Super NES and the Super Famicom. They went nuts with Mode 7. If you look at games like Super Castlevania or Goemon or any of these games, they're turning the screen. They have giant bosses at Mode 7 in Contra. We don't have any developers right now for the Switch who are like them. We have studios that are good at porting titles and running games like Witcher on the machine that really shouldn't run. But we don't have a Factor 5 or a Konami that really programs to the metal. And so I'm hoping the platform finds those people. But in the meantime, we get all these indie studios finding success on the Switch where there is something as vibrant as Steam on the platform that we haven't really seen on the consoles. So where's this going to go? I mean, like, I'm hoping that this is Nintendo's direction and they will upgrade the Switch and make a more powerful console and still maintain that kind of that uniqueness that it's a machine that you take with you on the go. I hope they keep on going there, but I would also be sad if they just did what I expected them to do. And I did not expect them to shrink an NES and a Super NES into a standalone classic console. And I did not expect them to do motion controls with the Wii or this weird kind of two-screen setup with the Wii U. And so my hopes are that Nintendo will try some cool new stuff that is akin to the Game & Watch, or maybe shrink some devices for us to carry in our pockets. And we'll see. I just hope they don't try to do an Xbox 1-2 or a PlayStation 5 and compete on those same grounds, because that's not who they are.
No. Do you think the streaming stuff that we keep hearing about with Stadia and xCloud and eventually PlayStation, I actually think even Nintendo's been confirmed that they're working on something.
Yeah.
Do you think that would encroach on the Switch's space, or do you think there'll always be, a desire from fans to be able to run things locally and not be dependent on an internet connection?
So it depends, right? I mean, to me, the streaming future is kind of a when, not an if. We will get to a point where streaming infrastructure is so good that you will have a connection anywhere you are in the world. Whether you're on a train or you're on a mountaintop, you will have a connection, because we as humans are obviously striving to be connected. And, smart people are spending a lot of time and effort in making sure that networks are ubiquitous. And it is a lot cheaper for people to run the big oomphy hardware somewhere else instead of always trying to downsize it. But who knows, right? Maybe somebody will magically solve battery challenges, right? Somebody may magically solve chipsets, and chipsets in small devices can be so powerful that you don't actually need to stream. So and so cheap, it's all about cost. So good question. My guess is that, I don't think the Google Stadia launch is going to be that amazing this year. I feel like it's kind of a weird platform, and the tech works. There's smart people there. They may have some really cool games that are unique to the platform, right? Like Halo sold us on the Xbox at a time when everybody scoffed at Microsoft making a console.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But I feel like it's kind of like a first start for streaming gaming in a more serious fashion. And then I think the war is won on economics, like whether those streaming services offer something for gamers that is more akin to a Netflix, right? Or to an iTunes.
Yeah.
Like 20 years ago, all of us would have said, vinyl and CDs from my cold dead hand. I'll never stream movies because my Blu-ray is way better quality. I need my 7.1 and streaming can't do it. Like, now I stream stuff on on Vudu or Amazon Prime, and it looks perfect. I got a gigabit line at home, and it looks great, and I don't need to buy the disc anymore. And I think the same thing is going to happen with gaming.
Makes sense.
Sad days.
So we had.
Don't forget HCI. Like the whole how you control games is just as important as to what is on the device.
That's
and
true.
Controllers matter, and how you interface with the devices. And Nintendo can innovate there.
Sure.
Absolutely. So Nintendo had a direct today, obviously, and we want to be appreciative of your time. So this will probably be the last official question we have on the books here. Couple highlights from you from Nintendo Direct. What stood out for you? I mean, there was a lot there in 40 minutes, and they kind of threw it at us quick and fast. What were some standout things for you personally?
there were a couple of really cool things. So there were a lot of things I didn't expect. Like Overwatch sadly got leaked. I felt like they wanted to close the show with Overwatch, but at the point everybody knew, so they got it out of the way in the beginning. Nice surprise, the way Super NES games are being released. I was expecting them to introduce the platform this year so that we are at the 1-year anniversary of Nintendo Online, right? That people would have a reason to subscribe, because I feel like everybody feels that NES games kind of fizzle, like we're not that excited about the releases as of late. And Super NES just has more better games. It's true. But that they're releasing 20 games today, when I was listening to this, 20 games at once without charging us more money, that's freaking awesome.
It's awesome.
It's amazing.
It's awesome.
Surprised. I was completely surprised at the quality of the games in that first batch. Like, I did not expect them to do Super Metroid, Super Mario World, F-Zero, Star Fox, Link to the Past, Yoshi's Island.
Yep.
Dream
That's
Course.
pretty notable too. Yeah. That was a really welcome and good surprise. And then some of the other things that, and we get to buy a new controller. Yay!
Yes.
Some of the other stuff I didn't expect. Doom 64 is kind of a cool thing. I remember playing that game back in the IGN 64 days. Divinity Original Sin 2. That's a really good game, and it's really fantastic.
We've heard.
Yeah, for on the go play. It's like, I think there were a lot of Switch owners or Nintendo fans who hadn't played Diablo before, and found their way into that excellent game. I'm hoping the same is happening with Divinity 2. And then just the I always love and it's out today drops. Like Banjo-Kazooie being out today, it just kind of makes you excited about going home and playing tonight, and then like seeing some of the Mii costumes. I name dropped Goemon earlier. I'm a big fan of the Mystical Ninja series. The best game in the series never came to the US. I hold hopes that the Super NES collection will eventually bring us Goemon 2. But they added a Goemon costume as a Mii Fighter
Nice.
patch. So that's really cool, right? Life sign there. Konami has not ruined everything yet.
If Seiken Densetsu 3 can make it after all these years, I have complete hopes.
I have a cap on that. Ironically, we still don't have the Earthbound we deserve. But
that's what I was about to say. That. Thank you.
Oh man, you just made Kevin's day.
I'm looking at my notes here. There was so much cool stuff in this direct. I feel like it was jam-packed. Obra Dinn is a really cool game that's coming. Jedi Outcast 2. Like, where is that? Right?
And you mentioned when you came on, you're excited for the Kirby game. You already downloaded it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be a great game.
But it's free, so if it's not, oh well.
Who cares?
Yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with the Kirby series. There's some really good games in the franchise, but oftentimes they're kind of like the single A or B plus games that I'll play and I say, oh, this is pretty good, but not the games where I'm anticipating a new release the same way I would be with Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Pokemon, Star Fox, all of that. Yeah. But I'm gonna play it. It looks like a cute little boss rush mode, right? And, obviously, multiplayer is always good. We can play that with the kids. And then Tokyo Mirage Sessions was. I kind of felt like they would give that one a second life on the Switch, so that they're moving forward with it. But there's some other games that are absent that I was hoping would be announced before we get Xenoblade Chronicles to come back.
Are you telling us you've got some insider info, Per? You want to drop one of these for us?
There are definitely some games coming that they didn't show in this direct.
Ooh, be excited, Shackers.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even it's so easy to make a prediction like that because Nintendo has such a great back catalog, and you know they will bring these games back.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, look how well Wind Waker sold in second outing, even, right? That was, I mean, is that the best game on Wii U? Probably, right? And that was,
it definitely runs better than Breath of the Wild does on Wii U. So yeah,
and so we are going to get games like that. There are titles in the GameCube library and in the Wii U library that we will see again.
Awesome,
good deal.
So, Per, either of you have any closing things? Kevin, Carol?
No,
good.
Per, I just wanted to say thanks. I mean, a bunch.
Yeah, thank you
for coming by the Nintendo Shack. We really appreciate it. It's not lost on me so I wanted to say this for our listeners, how much you do this. This is not uncommon. You should be applauded. You know, there's so many personalities, and you are one. You know, you're like I said, you're legendary. You're a big deal. And there's so many personalities and folks like you, that wouldn't go on, you know, like an indie podcast, you know, for a small group. But I've seen you do this, and I've seen you do it for other folks, and I think you should be applauded for it. And I really, really, really appreciate you coming by the Nintendo Shack and hanging out for us a little bit and letting our listeners know a bit about your career, talking some Nintendo with us, which we always appreciate. And, in the future, I'd always love to have you back. I'd love to have Casey over, whatever, whenever. It's great. I've always loved everything you do and how you do it, and just big fan.
No, that's very nice.
Paving the way. Thank you.
Look, I mean, it's by design. I wish I could do more of these, so I do sometimes have to push things out or say no to some appearances on podcasts because there are a lot of them. But I feel strongly about rewarding agency when somebody sits down and actually starts something. That is that's the first step to a new star emerging, somebody getting their start in the industry. And we get a lot of applications from, for writing positions or video positions, where you look at the resume and you say, yeah, you have some, you love the right things, but you haven't done anything yet. Right?
Yeah.
They'll have a resume where they were maybe in customer service, and so maybe they know a lot about interacting with people, or they've shot videos for soccer videos or football videos or something, and so they have some expertise. But I love seeing people who start something, even if you're producing a video that is good but has 2 views. That to me is the right step towards making it a career. So I'd love to support it whenever somebody reaches out and says we have a fledgling podcast, and can you come on and talk? I don't know that you're going to get more listeners by me being on, but maybe it helps.
That's okay. We don't do it for the listeners.
No, we do it because we love it.
Yeah, we love it. All right, so that's going to wrap up Nintendo Shack 98 as we have eyes towards our big 100th episode this month. We've got Zelda coming out. We've got more things planned for PSVG's September to Remember, but I really hope you enjoy this special episode as we help kick off with Board with Video Games 100. Kick off PSVG September to Remember. So that's going to do it. Signing off for us. Good night, Koopalings.
Bye-bye.
Say your bye, Carol.
Bye.
We're going to end the show. What are you doing?
This is Frederick from Fire Emblem Awakening. And I forgot the line already. What?